appreciated. Sade Robinson's voice will not go unheard. No. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Say her name.
We can't have this happening no more.
No.
It's a black girl, young girl.
Our family.
Yeah. But I just want to thank y'all for coming, and we appreciate it, and we're going to get justice for Sade.
This morning, we're spotlighting Sade Robinson as her family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the man accused of killing her. The 19-year-old was allegedly murdered after a first date with 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson. Their date was back in April, and he was arrested in connection to Robinson's death just days later. And that, of course, sparked a search for the teen's missing body parts. In a press conference held earlier this month by Robinson's family attorneys, they expressed their concerns on the case and their fight for transparency in the investigation.
At this point, though, we are hard-pressed and looking for transparency. We filed open records requests, which were, today we received information that they were being denied on the basis of criminal investigation, which is the age-old scenario that they tell people in the community. If you want transparency, there should be transparency. Open records laws were created for there to be transparency.
So how might this civil lawsuit affect the criminal case? Oftentimes we have two legal actions arising from the same set of facts. Somebody can be held both criminally liable and civilly liable. And this morning, this is really sad, but not all of Sade Robinson's remains have been recovered. Just think about that. Think about the agony her family is going through. Let me bring in two outstanding guests to analyze this case for us. Still with me, the Director of Prosecution Projects at Florida International University and former homicide prosecutor Melba Pearson, and domestic violence expert, former law enforcement officer, and the host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King. Melba, let me begin with you, please, with the legal approach here, with the family saying, you know what, we're not going to wait for the criminal case to play out. We're going to go ahead and file this civil case right now. What's your opinion on how, if in any way, it affects the prosecution?
So I think what the Robinson family are searching for here are answers. I think it's sounding to me that there was a breakdown in terms of the search and the attempts to find the entirety of Sade Robinson's remains so that the family has an entire body to at least bury. I mean, just think of the concept of that they can't even put their loved one to rest because the loved one is not intact. So I think that there's a lot of concerns with how the investigation has progressed, how the search has progressed. Even though the defendant has been arrested in this case, the family clearly wants more answers and maybe feels that things did not move as quickly as they should have. So that may be the genesis, the reason why they filed the civil lawsuit. But there's not going to be a lot of movement in the civil lawsuit because the defendant does not want to make any statements in the civil case that can be used against him in the criminal case. So generally, you will see the civil case proceed in the background, but it's the criminal case that will take precedence because that's the one where you're either going to end up in prison for the rest of your life or not. As in terms of the civil case, it's a matter of whether or not damages will be assessed and paid to the family.
Exactly, Melba. And so for anyone wondering how this goes, it's exactly like Melba just said. Remember this, when you see any other criminal cases, it's like the civil one typically follows along. The civil attorneys don't want to try their case first because they want to see if the state attorneys, who've got the much higher burden, can prove the case. And then it's just, as Melba said, it's a matter of damages. If you get that criminal conviction in civil court, then certainly where the burden is far lower, there's going to be damages awarded. So watch for this case to kind of just play along, not to be disposed of. Claudia King, I want to turn to you, tapping into your law enforcement background. Sadly, this morning, some of Sade Robinson's remains still have not been located. Her head and one of her arms still have not been found. Take us into the minds of those detectives working this case. How troubling is it when you've got a case like this where there's clearly been abuse of a corpse and you're trying to bring the victim home, bring the victim home in her or his entirety so that the family can properly grieve, properly honor her.
Julie, I guarantee you that every single one of those detectives has Sade's picture, you know, in their car, on their desk. They're thinking about her every moment of the day and thinking about her family and wanting to give them the peace of having all of her to put to rest. I do understand the family's concerns, you know, with not having all the answers that they want. And I understand the law enforcement side of wanting to protect the investigation. I think there does need to be a little bit better communication between the two so that the family knows and understands that law enforcement truly does care and they are truly doing everything that they absolutely can to find her remains so that they can put her to rest.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's heartbreaking. You know, I think it's easy to forget, you know, the men and women, you know, like yourself, Claudia, you know, who've served in law enforcement, and we thank you for your service. You know, you're people too, you know, just, you know, because you wear the uniform and the badge and the gun and all that. I think people forget at the end of the day, you know, you all are going home to your family members, your loved ones, you know, and especially for anyone who's working this case who may be a parent, you see this young girl, she's so young, she's a baby, she's 19, she's got her whole life ahead of her, and you see this young, innocent sweetheart who lit up rooms. Everybody that has been spoken to in the local media has said she was as vivacious as they come, just one of those kind humans who made everybody's day better, and does something normal, just goes on a date with apparently a nice guy, and then look what happens. Could we end on the safety aspect here? Because I think one of the things that's the toughest part of this case, you know, one of the tough parts for me to swallow is that Sade Robinson didn't do anything wrong. You know, she did what any 19-year-old girls do. You know, she's going out on a date, she's looking for love. Everybody said she was one of those people who just wanted to find a partner, and she had everything right. She had Life 360 on her phone. You know, she had told people she was going on this date. She was out in a public place. I guess, is there anything to be taken away from this that either of you ladies can think of for anyone to use this as a learning opportunity in her memory? We know she didn't die in vain. Her name is going to be remembered. Claudia, may I start with you on this? Anything safety-wise you can think to give our viewers as a tip?
First and foremost, we are not blaming Sade for anything that she did. Like you said, Julie, she took virtually every single precaution. The only other thing I would say is, you know, do a little research on people before you do meet them somewhere. Always meet them in public and have a check-in call. So I have a few single friends. When they go out, we schedule a check-in phone call for some point during their date so that I can call and hear their voice. Now, again, nothing can protect us, you know, from evil, but that's just another thing that you could do. Make sure somebody knows where you're going, what time you're getting there, what time you're coming home, checks in at all those times, and then checks in at some point during the date as well.
I love that. I love that, Claudia. Because, you know, you're right. When someone says, hey, I'll call you when I get home or let you know when I get home, if that time never comes, it's too late. Melba, anything you would like to add to that before we have to say goodbye to you?
I think that we have become really great internet sleuths when we want to be. So I think before you go out on a date with anyone, do as much vetting as you can in terms of their social media. Try to find out who mutual friends you may have in common. Try to vet and make sure they really work where they say they do. I mean, it's unfortunate that this is the society we're in, but luckily we have the internet to hopefully get some answers and prevent this from happening again.
I really appreciate that tip. Verification. You know, like you both said, check in with people who know you can trust, and then verify. Great information from you both, as always. Claudia's come along with us. Melba Pearson, we've got to say goodbye, and a big thank you to you for all of your time and expertise. We'll see you soon.